Joining us now, friend of the program, former Georgia quarterback, ESPN college football analyst, co-host of the Snaps podcast, and the SEC's all-time passing leader, zucchini bread maven, Aaron Murray. Aaron, dude, I'm juiced up to have you. It's been far too long. Thank you for making time. How we doing?
Doing good, man. Still disappointed that On3 has not jumped on the zucchini bread train, and I don't see loaves on the desk behind you. But next time I have a Vanderbilt game and I'm in Nashville, I'll bring some, or like we talked about before the show, when you guys are here for SEC Media Days in Atlanta, I will make sure you get a loaf. Just to, carb up a little bit, get your workouts in, you're looking nice and swole, carrying that baby around.
I'm trying to. I mean, the shirts keep getting smaller, but I hope you know, since our last episode, the legend of the zucchini bread has been a constant presence in the On3 office. Like, I think it was like the last question we asked you post-Thanksgiving or pre-Thanksgiving. It was like the zucchini bread was like your number one Thanksgiving food. We have it left an impression on us. You could have said stuffing, you could have said turkey, but like that stuck with us. So we appreciate you giving us something to chew on, both literally and metaphorically speaking here.
Yes. Well, speaking of tiny shirts, this is no plug or anything like this, but if you do want to give to a charity, I work with a charity called Extra Special People, ESP, and we host a golf tournament in my family every single summer. So I'm getting all the celebrities out, a bunch of my former Bulldogs, and we get current Bulldogs out there to play. And I'm texting all the guys like, hey, what polo size do you want? I'm going to hook them up with a nice polo with the ESP logo on it. Brandon Boykin, for those dog fans listening right now, remember Brandon Boykin, defensive back. I mean, just yoked. Looks like a Ninja Turtle.
Yeah.
I said, Brandon, what polo size do you want? Small.
No.
Small. Yes. So Josh Payton yourself would be very proud of the extra small polo that Boykin is wearing with his biceps that are twice the size as mine, as I'm wearing an XL over here.
Dude, what a beast. Just the confidence to say small. Like, as a former college football player in the SEC, small polo. I aspire to have that.
It's going to rip in the backswing. It will rip in the backswing.
I mean, it's going to be a sight to behold, though, when he tees off. Like, that's going to be appointment viewing, I have to believe. But speaking of Georgia, Aaron, let's start there, man. Like, there's just an interesting vibe, it feels like, nationally around Georgia, because Gunner Stockton's going to be the guy, and there's or assuming he's going to be the guy, it seems like there's more of uncertainty around Georgia for some folks. Like, where are you at on Georgia, and where are you at on Gunner Stockton right now?
Well, it's really funny because I was even with some guys a couple of days ago. I was with David Green, Shockley, a couple other Georgia quarterbacks, and we were talking about like last season and Georgia football in general. And the big thing from them was last year was in the year from a lot of Georgia fans, honestly. Like that last year was Kirby Smart's best coaching job ever, and what he was able to do. And kind of in the moment you felt like that, and you somewhat feel like that as well right now. But you go back to the NFL draft, and Georgia had 14 guys drafted to the NFL, which was second most to Ohio State. And you think like, okay, well, if Carson would have gone to the NFL draft, that would have been 15. So they would have had just as many guys drafted into the NFL as what Ohio State had, who won the national championship. So to look at all the talent that UJ had and lost, and then you see what they're bringing back. And I think for me, the hard part is you have to realize that, yes, Georgia's recruited at a high level. Number one class, number two class, number three class. They're stacked, but it's a lot of unknowns. And I think to me, that's a little bit worrisome if you are a Georgia fan. And for me, who covers Georgia and a letterman there at the University of Georgia, is what will they look like? We're just a little bit unknown because of the youth.
Does it feel at all to you like this is going to be a more edgy Georgia team? Like, you got a quarterback who literally died in the SEC championship game, jumped up, walked off under his own power. He's going to be your starter. I'm like, the Gunner Stockton of it all, Kirby Smart now being able to actually tell his team, like, hey, people aren't picking you to win the national title. Or, like, it used to be kind of manufactured. It feels a little bit more real than maybe it has in previous years. I love the edge around Georgia, or the perceived edge that they could have. Am I wrong there, or what's your take there?
I mean, I've seen a bunch of polls over the past week or two. Everyone's given their, post-spring top 25 in college football, and I've seen Georgia outside the top 10 in a lot of spots. And, honestly, for me, I probably wouldn't have them at one. I maybe somewhere around the top five, just because of the fact that they have recruited a high level. And you have to understand, it's not just about, who has playing experience, who's played 1, 2, 3 years, who has the most seniors back, or the most starters back. But like, what coaches do you trust that can legitimately develop talent? And I think that's the one thing that Kirby Smart and Schumann and Bobo do better, if not the best in the country, is getting elite talent, retaining that talent as good as anyone else, and then taking that talent to another level. So I think you have to kind of trust the process a little bit and understand that, yes, we live in this transfer portal age where it's nice to know that, hey, we just went to the portal, got a receiver, got a left tackle, or got a quarterback that has 2 years of experience. We've seen the tape. We know what he's going to be like. It's nice as a fan to go into a season with that confidence. It's a little bit harder nowadays to trust that, hey, that quarterback, Gunner Stockton, who's been in the system, has played games, has actually played a couple meaningful games, is going to develop and get the time and reps now necessary in spring and in fall camp, summertime, to be a legitimate quarterback within the SEC. So I think you have to trust the fact that, hey, Kirby Smart is still, in my opinion, the best coach in America. He's got some of the best coordinators in America. They're going to get those guys, while they might not be experienced, they're extremely talented and ready to go. And going back to your question about Gunner and if Gunner's going to be the guy, from all accounts and from everyone I've talked to, he is going to be QB1. I think that the biggest difference is, while Puglisi could be and deemed to be maybe the more talented of the two quarterbacks,
Sure.
Better arm strength, maybe a little bit, very equal in the mobility category. It's just not there with the speed of understanding the offense. And it's not the sense of like, oh, why can't you dumb down the offense if he's the better quarterback? I try to tell people this all the time. I'm 6'1", maybe. Some people say I'm 6 foot. I'll go with 6'1". 6'1", average arm strength. But I could get everyone else around me to play at a high level. So it's not at the quarterback position always about what you know. Like, I'm sure Puglisi knows what he needs to do. If I tell him, hey, man, curl flats, what are you doing here? Well, single high, I'm going to work this way. Versus two high, probably going to work here right to a check down. Like, he gets all that. I guarantee it. But can he put his offensive line in a position to pick up a backside corner blitz, or to change the mic to the will linebacker, or a hot route receiver? Like, those little things, those little small, minute details to make those guys around you play at a high level, that's that next level thing that he's going to have to continue to learn and develop. Where right now you have Gunner, who knows the system and can put everyone else in a position to go out there and play at a high level as well.
And it seems like there's a lot of buy-in to Gunner Stockton. Like, we watched the SEC title game I mentioned already, but like, he checks into the game in the second half, and there wasn't this, oh shoot, sort of vibe around Georgia. There wasn't this, oh, we have our backup in, like, what's going on? It was like, no, we got Gunner in the game. Let's go now, baby. Like, we're behind 14 all the way. And then I think we all saw that in the playoff game too. Like, I understand Georgia lost the game, and Notre Dame ended up being within a score of Ohio State in the fourth quarter of the national title game. So, like, that is what it is. I was impressed with Gunner Stockton against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot from that game that, because they lost, it sort of maybe muddies the picture around how well he played. But like, Aaron, he threw for more yards against Notre Dame in the playoff than Will Howard, than Drew Aller, like two good quarterbacks. I mean, Will Howard's an NFL quarterback now. Drew Aller, some people are saying, is going to be the first quarterback taken next year. Like, I think the Gunner Stockton optics, I understand he's not Carson Beck. He's not the known commodity. I really feel like with what we've seen from him, there's a lot to be excited about with him.
I mean, I bought into that narrative last season as well. And I think part of it was for the fact that, I've always been a big fan of Carson. For since the first time I saw Carson, 4 years ago in a preseason scrimmage in Sanford Stadium, I was like, man, that dude's got it. Like, there's just something about his skill set, his size, and there was a reason why Carson was projected number one pick in the NFL draft heading into next season. So when you go to practice and you see Carson next to Gunner, yeah, there's a difference. I mean, one guy just throws it like an NFL quarterback. The other guy is still, more athletic, throws it well, but just not to the same level. And, I can go back to, 5-6 years ago with Jake Fromm and Jacob Eason. Jacob Eason, 6'5", throws the football as pretty as anyone I've ever seen in my entire life, like NFL, college, anyone. And then you got Jake Fromm, kind of built like me, throws it well, but not that elite arm strength. Well, guess what? Jake Fromm is still kind of jumping around the NFL, still has an NFL career, had an incredible college career, while Jacob Eason, 6'5", had the potential, but just never really got to that. And I'm not saying that Carson's not going to reach his potential. I still think Carson has an opportunity. I think we're going to talk about him later, to have a really good year at Miami, be a first-round draft pick next year. I thought he made the right decision. But just because you look good in shorts, just because you're that BP hitter that's out there just bombing home run after home run in BP, doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be a superstar in the game. So going back to your original question, I kind of bought into that narrative that, hey, Gunner may not be this elite quarterback, kind of some of the stuff I saw in practice comparing him to Carson. But then I went back, this was probably a month or two ago, and I watched every single snap from Gunner the entire season, from the games that he came in during blowouts to the SEC championship game to that game at Notre Dame. And I walked away extremely impressed. Footwork, accuracy, ability to push the football down the field, obviously his athleticism, his guts, his determination, the way he plays the position. You can see why guys want to rally around Gunner Stockton. So I'd say that to say the fact that he's now had the opportunity to be the guy all offseason, going to continue to be the guy. I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind that he will not be QB1 come that first game of the football season. I think you're going to see a guy that's going to have a tremendous season, especially now, fingers crossed, with the talent that Georgia's been able to amass around him at the receiving position.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even touch on that. Yeah, I want to get your thoughts. Like the receiving room a year ago for Carson Beck, I mean, you're dealing with the most drops in the country. Like, that's just, I mean, you know better than anybody, Aaron. Like, that's tough to gain momentum when you're consistently dropping the football on what should be first downs and maybe more than that for your offense. Speaking to the receiver room, feels like just everything seems to be Mike Bobo's fault in Athens, always. Like global warming, Mike Bobo's fault.
Always.
Chick-fil-A closed on Sundays, Mike Bobo's fault. Receivers dropping the football, Mike Bobo's fault. Like, why does he get such a tough rap in Athens? Because I don't understand it.
It's not anything new. I mean, this was going on when I was there. And it was funny because, we would feel all the complaining and the bitching and moaning. And we're scoring 40 points a game. We're like one of the top 10 offenses in the country. Like, what more do you want from us? I mean, come on, guys. Like, we're scoring points. Why don't you get on Todd Grantham and tell him to stop calling, whatever he calls on third and fourth down, and maybe we win some more games. But I think it's a familiarity thing. I think there's we've been around Bobo for so long, from his time at quarterback at the University of Georgia in the 90s to, being a quarterback coach, then the OC. When you get to know someone, it's like being, it's like me and T-Bob. We work together for so long, we can kind of just rip each other on the show, and it's just kind of, it's casual, it's nice, it's fun. This is not as fun, I would say, because of a little fire from the Georgia fans, a little bit too much. But you kind of feel like I know this guy so well, I can just kind of let loose and rip him a little bit more, which not to say that's fair or not fair, but I think Mike Bobo does a tremendous job. I think even going back to 2 years ago when Georgia I was talking to someone about this 2 days ago too. We're kind of talking about the offense and the playmakers, going back to that game against Alabama in the SEC championship game. And you go back and watch it for those who, maybe have access to all 22. And they're like, oh, well, you had Brock and you had Ladd, and look how good they're, playing right now in the NFL, their rookie seasons. If you go back and watch that game versus the Crimson Tide, those guys were banged up. They looked like a shell of themselves. And probably, if it was another game of the season, if it wasn't the SEC championship game, those guys probably would not have played. They didn't look good. So they weren't healthy that year for the majority of the season. Ladd rarely played. Brock was out for the majority of the season. This past year, you had all the drop issues. And I'm not here to make excuses for Mike Bobo. I guarantee you he's saying, hey, I got to be better as an offensive coordinator. I got to put my guys in a better position to go out there and have success. But they did not perform on the outside to what I expected. I thought Dom was going to have a better year. I was hoping Aaron Smith would kind of make that next stride in the right direction. I thought the tight end room with Oscar and Lawson were going to perform better than what I saw last year. You saw Oscar kind of have some struggles early. He started to produce later on in the season, but it just never clicked on the outside. And then Carson started pushing and pressing a little bit as well. So, like I said, for Georgia fans, the belief is, hey, Kirby put an emphasis at the receiving position this offseason, went and got two of the top guys in the portal, went and got a really talented recruiting class. Still returns Oscar and Lawson. They got another freshman tight end I know they absolutely love as well. This is as good, hopefully, of a unit on the outside as Georgia's had in quite some time.
I mean, personally, I would just love to see Mike Bobo be able to drop the mic a little bit after. I mean, maybe it'll never happen just based on how his perception is in Athens. I'd love to see him just say, we scored 40 a game yet again, national title, whatever. Like, he'll keep that to yourself. But we mentioned Carson Beck, man. Transfers after, flirting with the NFL, declaring for the NFL draft, ends up popping one day that he's going to go to Miami. I think the narrative around him is a little bit warped too. I feel like the time at Georgia for that second season with what we just mentioned, the drops, not being able to run the football, it just didn't feel like a very Georgia-ish team a year ago, and they still won the SEC. Where are you with Carson Beck right now, man, heading into what will be his first year in Coral Gables?
I still think at the end of the day, if Carson was healthy, he probably would have been the number 4 quarterback taken off the board. So you're still talking about, let's go back to Cam Ward a year ago. Cam Ward was projected to be 3rd, 4th quarterback taken in the NFL draft, or 3rd, 4th round in the NFL draft, not 3rd, 4th quarterback, but kind of somewhere in that mid-round area. Decides to come back, goes to Miami, has the year that he has, is now the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. And I'm not saying that there's some correlation that's going to happen that Carson transferred to Miami and he turns around and is going to be the number 1 quarterback pick. But he was projected a year ago at this time to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. So there are already a lot of people very high on his skill set, his size, and what he projects to the next level. Let's talk about 6'5", 230, 235, great arm, can throw with touch, can throw with anticipation, can push the ball vertically down the field. I think he checks off most of the boxes. I think last year, going back to what we talked about before, at times he was pressing. At times he felt like he had to be Superman. And at times that's what caused the interceptions and the mistakes. He needs to learn to continue to play within himself, play a very mature style of football. And speaking of the word mature, I think that's the biggest red flag for me right now is where is he in the maturity factor? Because you have heard in the locker room at Georgia, there was some disconnect with Carson and his teammates, that there wasn't this guy that was a true locker room guy. And that's why guys kind of rallied around Gunner Stockton. There's a little bit more belief in him as maybe a person as just a human being. And I'm not saying like Carson is like this, bad, evil person and stay away from him, but there are some possible character flaws that you heard from the locker room. Then you're seeing in the offseason with all the nonsense on TikTok and then the girlfriend stuff. And it's too much mess. It's too much for a guy that's going to be 23, 24 years old. I need you focusing on football. You're on a brand new team. You're coming off an elbow injury. I don't need you in the media other than, hey, man, I'm throwing 5 yards today. I'm throwing 10 yards today. I'm throwing 20 yards today. I'm progressing. I'm learning the playbook. I'm here to lead the Miami Hurricanes to an ACC championship next year. Not TikTok news, girlfriend news. It's like there's a sense of maturity, who he is as a human when it comes to the locker room that is kind of carrying over from Athens now to Coral Gables. That does have me worried a little bit. But from a pure talent standpoint, there is no doubt Carson Beck is a very gifted passer of the football. It's going to be interesting to see how healthy he looks and how fast he looks when it comes to health to start the season. And then how well he's built that chemistry with his receivers. It's a brand new receiving core. Miami lost a lot of talent. And yeah, they're still talented, but a brand new quarterback, limited reps, new receivers. It's going to take some time to gel, and we'll see how long that takes.
I think what you brought up about the psychological part for him is super interesting and kind of gets glossed over in the world of social media and have your take right now and all these things. But like, I can't imagine where he was at during this season when he's supposed to be what you mentioned. He's supposed to be the next number 1 pick in the NFL draft. There's conversation. I think he might have been like the Heisman Trophy favorite heading into the year. Like there's just the weight of the world on this kid's shoulders. And then in the most visible spot at University of Georgia, where you're supposed to win the national championship, he's not performing. Like, I have to just believe, like, that's why I loved so much the fact that he did stay in college and transferred to a place like Miami from the state of Florida. Like, just the idea to hopefully be able to reset a little bit. Now, I know there's been some stuff in the news with him, like you said, social media and the girlfriend stuff. Like, I hope that he's able to just kind of flush all that, get into fall camp, have success. Because, like you said, we know he can spin it. Like, Aaron, when that tatted arm is dealing rockets and it's back fully healthy, it's something to watch, man. There's some RPMs on the football.
The Lambos, baby.
The tats and I mean, It's funny to say. He kind of fits Miami in a weird way, right? So we're rooting for Carson Beck, man. Hoping he pulls it together. Hoping he's able to spin a little bit this upcoming season. But Bama's super interesting, Aaron. I want to get your thoughts on this, man. The quarterback room, it feels like it's Ty Simpson until it's not, by all accounts, based on what's going on. I think Ryan Grubb actually came out and said if we started the season tomorrow, like Ty Simpson would be our guy. I'm not falling for the head fake that Bama's dead after a 9-3 year, Aaron. I don't buy it. I think the roster's too good. I think Kalen DeBoer is too good. I love they got Ryan Grubb in the fold, top 10 defense last year. Like, where are you at right now in Tuscaloosa?
I love Kalen DeBoer still. There's no doubt about it. I'm with you. I still think he's a top tier coach. He's going to get it together. I think the combination of him and Grubb together is an absolutely beautiful thing. The quarterback position is still a question mark. I still thought that Jalen Milroe had a lot of really good tools to be an exceptional quarterback. And at times you saw that, the Georgia game, but a couple other games throughout the season where like, man, the dude's the best athlete on the field. He can throw the ball 60, 70 yards down the field. Yeah, there's some intermediate throws that are struggling, but you get Kalen DeBoer with him, and he's going to be able to clean up a lot of what I would deem were more fundamental issues. Like for those who follow me on social media and kind of our YouTube channel, you saw me do some of the breakdowns, and a lot of the issues I thought with Jalen a year ago were just purely fundamentals. Where his feet were aligned to where he was trying to throw the football did not match up, which caused a lot of inaccuracies. And like I said, I was hoping that Kalen could kind of fix some of that. It never did. And you kind of saw a Jalen Milroe that looked like the best player in college football versus Georgia. Then at times last year looked very average, which was surprising. You go back to Ty Simpson a couple of years ago, and the lackluster performance from Alabama as a whole, especially that game versus USF, and you kind of sit like, man, is that going to be the guy? But then you have to kind of remember too, like football players develop, just like I talked about with Georgia previously. Football players and great coaches take players and they hopefully take them to another level. So the goal and hope is, hey, Ty Simpson has matured over the past couple of years. He's continued to develop as a quarterback. Maybe he's a better schematic fit for Grubb and DeBoer and what they're trying to do. We'll see. I still think at the end of the day, big issue with Alabama over the past couple of years is they've not been the same on the outside. Ryan Williams is elite. Ryan Williams is probably the number 2 receiver in America. No, don't get me wrong. But when Alabama was great over the past 2 decades, they were either one of 2 things. Dominant offensive line with guys like Derrick Henry that would just run the ball and just beat you to death, or they evolved to having 3 elite receivers and they would just throw it all over the ballpark with 2 and guys that were now playing in the NFL. And then all of a sudden now you got to the point where Alabama offensively is like, well, they're not elite running the football. They're not blowing people off consistently at the offensive line position, and they're not elite or deep at the receiving position on the outside. So like, what is their identity? Literally, they had an identity, and Saban did a good job of transitioning that identity from power to spread you out, throw the football. What are they trying to do at Alabama? Do they have the weapons to do that? Do they have the weapons that DeBoer had at Washington to spread you out with multiple receivers, or do they get back to trying to run the football a little bit more? So I think to me, that's an interesting thing. I think they're trying to figure that out still, and a lot has to depend on how good Ty Simpson's going to be.
And I think what you just said is exactly why last year was so tricky to evaluate when it comes to what next year is going to be. Because Jalen Milroe, like you said, there's times where, dude, he's awesome. It's almost like playing golf. Like sometimes off the tee box, it's like, dang, that was sick. Like I am the best golfer alive. And then there's other times it's like a short putt to make it. And like Jalen Milroe, we're missing on there's a goal line fade against Tennessee, and he's just throwing it to the other team. I'm like, hey, like why is that not consistent enough? But to what I was saying a second ago, like Jalen Milroe with what he was as a passer, I don't know that Bama fans even got to see what they had in the receiving room. Like Jeremy Bernard very quietly had a great year last year. Ryan Williams, you mentioned, they bring in the kid from Miami, Isaiah Horton, who I think they're stoked about. Some freshman guys they're pumped about. So I think that's what makes me so intrigued by them. If Ty Simpson is a plus at quarterback, not just like keeps it even, status quo guy, but if he's like truly an elevator, like you mentioned before talking about Georgia and what that quarterback room needs, I think Bama has a roster and receiving core to really make some noise, and I think be like a national title contender. I really, really feel that way about Kalen DeBoer and that offense.
Yeah. No, listen, I'm hoping so. DeBoer was put in a very difficult situation a year ago. There's no doubt about that, taking over for Nick Saban. And, you know, I still believe that he is a good enough coach to get that roster, which is elite, to being competitive. But, like, listen, they're kind of borderline. And there's a lot of teams in the SEC right now that are pretty dang good. So we'll see. Unfortunately for them, the new rules aren't there yet where, if you do go 9-3, there's still a possibility that you can make it into the playoffs. Maybe next year they could. But I still don't know if I see a roster or enough elite playmakers on offense to still have the feeling of this is a team that's just going to dominate everyone. And I'll be honest with you, like, I don't know about any roster right now in America that I feel that way about. Like I said, Ohio State has a bunch of positions that they need to continue to fill from a year ago, getting 15 guys drafted to the NFL. Texas, we'll talk about Arch and him at the quarterback position. They have a bunch of positions they need to fill. Georgia, we talked about, have a bunch of positions. Like, this isn't the great thing with where we are in college football nowadays. It's hard to build that dynasty, that team that year in and year out can just stockpile talent. What the roster is going to look like. They're just going to reload and go out there and just win a bunch of football games. And not just win them, but win them by like 20, 30, 40 points. Like, just absolutely blow everyone away. That's going to be more and more difficult to do in this new era, which is healthy for the game, in my opinion. But, like, to go back to the thing about Alabama is, like, I don't see a roster or a team right now that you just roll the ball out and you're like, okay, they're just going to dominate everyone. They may win 10 games, they may win 11 games, but I think it's going to be difficult to do. And that's for that's for every team in the SEC and Big Ten.
No, I mean, I think that's well said. And then speaking to, like, the college football playoff now, even if you do win every game by 20 from September through November, well, are you hot at the right time when it comes to the playoff?
Yeah.
Are you healthy at the right time? Are you in a good place psychologically? Are you able to use the bye week if you get one of those in the 12-team format the right way, with every team who got a bye this past playoff losing their first game? So the whole thing's interesting. But you mentioned Arch, man. When we spoke last, it was pre-Texas A&M game. And I thought, had a really interesting thought on this where, hey, Quinn is maybe not looking how we need him to look if we're Texas. We get to Atlanta and we play a Georgia. Like, it might be best to go with an Arch Manning at some point in time. I don't think that as this whole thing has progressed, that is by any stretch of the imagination, like, unreasonable. In fact, I would even go so far as to say Arch Manning, with how they call the offense, could be an upgrade in 2025. Do you feel that way, or where are you at on Arch Manning?
I'm very hesitant, I would say, is the right word for me right now. You go back and watch Arch last year, while there's a lot of good stuff you saw from him, there was a lot of stuff where you're like, is he elite? Is Arch Manning an elite thrower of the football? Like, elite. Like, you put him out there in shorts, you're like, oh my God. Kind of like the Carson Beck Gunner thing we talked about at the beginning. Like, I wouldn't say elite. I think he's a phenomenal athlete. I think he's a good thrower of the football. I would not characterize any part of his game to date as elite. And I know there's a lot of people very bullish about, he's going to be the first pick in the NFL draft next year. He's a top 10 quarterback. I'm like, what have you seen? Like, truly, like, sit me down and show me the tape and tell me right there that looks like a number one pick in the NFL draft. Or are you just saying that because you want to grab headlines and you're just buying into the Manning hype name? And listen, I will never hope will or bad against any quarterback. And I know how difficult it is to play the position. Hell, it's 10 times more difficult to play in today's world with NIL and the pressures of that, plus being a Manning. Like, the world is going to be all eyes on him, especially that first matchup against Ohio State. I'm just saying, when you go back and watch the tape last year, the time he really played was against inferior opponents, which I could have gone out there and looked fast against the teams that he played against, for goodness sakes. I want to see it against Ohio State week 1 on the road before I really buy into the hype. Because, like I said, based on the tape that I've seen, it's a good quarterback. And hell, Quinn played awful at times last year. So, is that an upgrade? Yeah, but does that mean that, like, that's a massive upgrade? Quinn got drafted in the 7th round. So an upgrade would be a quarterback that got drafted in the 6th round. So, like, that doesn't mean that you're elite because you're better than the guy that was a year ago that just got drafted in the 7th round. I think he has a chance to be better. I think the fact that he's athletic helps a ton. because that was a major issue for Texas last year, Quinn's inability to run. But to sit here and say that, like, in his first season as a true starter, that Arch Manning's going to turn into the number one pick in the NFL draft, I'm not buying that right now. Until I see it.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL draft odds a year from now, when we haven't even seen him play full season as the starter. Caden Smith and I, our producer, we were just talking about this the other day. It's like Vegas is just dangling it in front of you and saying you weren't going to throw money on the NFL draft a year from now, but when you see the last name Manning and you see the odds and you think about Peyton and Eli, you're like, oh, maybe I'll just throw a couple dollars, donate something to the folks in Las Vegas and build some more skyscrapers. It's just like, that to me is so ridiculous. The thing that's interesting to me about him and how we talk about him is almost a throwback of sorts in his development. Like, we haven't seen a 5-star quarterback sit on the bench for more than a year. I mean, I couldn't name the last guy that truly waited his turn and then had several years, several springs under his belt before he got the starting job. So in that sense, I'm almost willing to be a little bit more critical of Arch Manning in the first month of the season if we don't see it. Not that I'm going to, think we define him in September by any stretch of the imagination, but like the fact that he's had some time in the system, had some time under Steve Sarkisian and all those things to get acclimated to college football. Like, I wonder how that's going to translate to him maybe having a quicker start to his career.
Well, he's definitely more developed. There's no doubt about that. Like, he understands the offense. They're going to be talented around him. I still, my biggest worry is still this. I would still consider a top 2, if not top 3 roster in America a year ago. Like, that Texas roster was loaded. There's no doubt about it. And Quinn at times was a liability. If you were such a superstar, and if Sark is as good of a coach as we all believe he is, why was he not playing? If you can look at your roster and say, this is a championship roster, and my quarterback is not playing at a championship level, and I got this 5-star that is supposed to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, why is Sark not playing him? Or why did Sark not play him? That it should be worrying to me. And once again, like, I'm not saying that he's a bad quarterback. I just think like that's a red flag to me, and I need to see it before I believe it. I'll be cheering for him. Don't get me wrong. I love the Mannings. I have a great relationship with them. I think he's a great kid. I've known him for a long time, from back when I used to be a counselor at the camp. I hope he goes out there and proves me wrong and is the bona fide first pick in the NFL draft. Just show me what you got, buddy. Show me the money.
I think that's a great way to say it, because I think with the last name Manning, so many people are so ready to jump on the bandwagon and say he's the next this, he's the next that. And it's almost like, no, it should be prove to me you can play this at a high level before we coordinate. Like you're not saying something down on the guy. You're like, I want to see a first-year starting quarterback in the toughest conference in America maybe show a little bit more before I go ahead and crown him as the number 1 overall draft pick in next year's draft. But one guy that it has proven a lot so far in the conference, Garrett Nussmeier, last year over 4,000 yards, texted you before the show, just said, Aaron, like, here's kind of what I'm thinking show-wise, any other teams that you want to make sure we work in there. You're like, dog, I'm high on LSU. So I just want to give you the floor to put it on wax on how you feel about the Tigers.
Well, listen, I know there's been a lot of discussion about Brian Kelly and is he truly an elite coach, and where would you put Brian Kelly when it comes to ranking coaches in college football? And I've loved Brian Kelly and what he's done in his career. Obviously, going back to what he was able to do at Cincinnati and Notre Dame, and kind of year 1 at LSU, and I feel like I have to continue to remind LSU fans and fans of college football in general. And at some point, this is going to run out, because you'll get to a point where it's kind of aged out a little bit time-wise. But he took over a roster 3 years ago that had 36 guys returning. The mass exit after the previous regime was wild. So you're taking over a team with 36 returning guys when Georgia and Bama and Tennessee and all these other teams, and Texas, I know Texas wasn't in the SEC at the time, but still, like, that's who you're being compared against. We're returning the majority, like 60 guys, 70 guys. There was a lot of catching up that had to be done on both sides of the football. And then to go in year 1 to win the SEC West was absolutely incredible. And I know it feels like if you're a Tiger fan, you're kind of just running into a wall right now. Same record year in and year out. You got a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback that, rookie of the year in the NFL. Like, why wasn't that year more successful? And I get it's frustrating. No doubt about it. I still believe he is a tremendous coach. He's one of the top coaches in America, and he's going to get things right. And then you look at the defense side of the football. Baker back for his second season.
Mm-hmm.
That defense got a little bit better last year, even with some depth issues, especially up front. I think that defense will continue to move in the right direction because I believe Baker is one of the best and premier defensive coordinators in all of college football. And then you look at the offensive side. You have Garrett Nussmeier back, who I believe is if not the best, one of the best top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the SEC come next season. You're loaded once again at the receiving position. You went out there and got some top guys from Oklahoma and from Kentucky to fill up some needs on the outside. The question is going to be the offensive line. You lose some guys up front. Obviously, you're going to have to replace them. But the fact that you got your quarterback, you got elite playmakers on the outside, I think the defense will continue to move in the right direction. I believe in Brian Kelly. I believe in Baker at the defensive coordinator spot. I think LSU is kind of one of those teams that's sitting back saying, we should feel good about our roster. We should feel good about our quarterback. And I think right now it's just a belief in, do we truly believe Brian Kelly is a good enough coach to get us into the playoffs?
And I'm so glad you said that around just his track record as a head coach and what he inherited at LSU. I think a lot of people see what LSU hasn't done, and they compare him to, well, Les Miles won us a national title, Ed Orgeron won us a national title, Nick Saban won us a national title. And it's like, yes, that's true, but what Brian Kelly took over into where you are now, we had someone call in and leave a voicemail and ask the question, like, hey, is Brian Kelly holding us back? And I'm like, dog, I don't know. It might have been a lot worse if you didn't have Brian Kelly based on where you were when he got there. Like, I'm not so sure Brian Kelly isn't the reason that you're at where you're at now. Like, think if he didn't bring in Jaden Daniels or he didn't bring in Mike Denbrock for that season where they were scoring, it felt like every single time they touched the football. Like, if Brian Kelly wasn't there to elevate this team to where they were, I don't know that LSU has the outlook they do on 2025, which you just mentioned it. I think they should feel like they have a chance to go compete for a national title or at least be in that conversation now.
No, I agree. Like I said, it's funny when you look at the SEC right now. I feel like the elite rosters have questions at the quarterback spot, and I know I'm a little bit biased because I played the position, but it's kind of the trigger man. You need that trigger man back there to have success. And Georgia going to be breaking in a brand new quarterback. You would still deem Georgia as an elite roster. Quarterback questions. Alabama elite roster. Quarterback questions. I still go back to Texas, elite roster, brand new quarterback, some quarterback questions that need to be answered. So it's like all the teams that have like these, like what we consider top tier, bunch of 5 stars, when the blue chip ratio comes out, they'll probably be like 1, 2, and 5, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
But we have questions about the most important position. You look at Florida, you look at South Carolina, you look at LSU. You kind of say like, okay, well maybe there's some questions at certain position groups, and maybe that as a whole, they're not as talented from a complete roster standpoint, but they got a trigger man. They got a dude we believe in. And I would say those 3 quarterbacks at those 3 spots are probably 3 of the best in the SEC. But what's the difference between LSU, Florida, and South Carolina? I would still say LSU probably has the better roster of the 3. So you kind of lean to like if there was one of them that has the elite quarterback, that has a good enough roster, that could be in contention to win the SEC and move on to the playoffs, LSU would kind of be my bet there.
Along with the head coach who, in terms of like the number of games he's coached relative to winning percentage, like it marries up nicely. It marries up very, very nicely. Aaron Murray, man, I appreciate you making time, dude. You got a marathon around the corner. How we feeling?
Feeling better than I did last week when we ran 22, but that was kind of the peak miles of the training. Now it's kind of just a nice, easy, 8 miles this morning. So just an easy 8 miles today. And then, June 1st will be go time for the marathon. So it's our anniversary. Nothing says I love you like going out to San Diego and running 26.2 miles. Dude,
that is a labor of love. You said easy 8 miles. I haven't had an easy 8 miles since I watched like the Eminem movie. Like that's ridiculous. 8 miles just as a casual stroll for you right now?
Dude, it's crazy. It's wild how the body and the mind change. Because I remember when we started the training process, I've never run more than 5 miles before. So like when we got to our first time running like 8, 9 miles, I was like, man, I'm dying. And like now I think like anything less than 15 is just like casual.
Dang.
It's wild. Like your body just so adapts so fast, the mindset, and you get that runner's high and you just learn to enjoy it. So it's kind of cut into my golf time, unfortunately, this off season. So my handicap's complete crap, but I've slowly learned to enjoy running with the wife.
Hey, that's SEC all-time leading passer kind of physique you're working with there to get that 26.2. Brother, we're excited to hear about that. Thanks again for all your time. I think I asked you for 30 minutes and took 40, but I appreciate you, man. And I'm fired up to hear about the finish line zucchini bread. That will, I'm sure, be glorious.
Ooh, carb load, baby. I'm going to need one the night before and then right after. So
beautiful. Aaron, thanks again, brother. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, man.